Happy Self Love Sunday, ladies. I hope that you're doing well. I hope that your journeys are going well. Today is a different kind of self love video, in that I am going to talk about love. Love on another level. Love that I had never had the privilege to experience before until this person walked into my life. And sometimes when we think about love experiences, we tend to think fairy tale, right? It's like these Disney movies we grew up on where, there was always, the prince who comes to save us or whatever, right? But in some ways, it is kind of a fairy tale story, but it just doesn't end the way the movies do, per se, right? So I remember it was May of 2017 um, when Kuseem Chandler walked into my life. I was at a friend's surprise birthday party. Now, we're from the same hometown, so I knew about him, heard about him, like anything. And when you come from a small town, right, you hear people's names. And but I didn't know who he was. I graduated high school with his sister, so I knew her, but I didn't know him. And I remember being at this party, everybody having a great time, and I wasn't interested at all. Like, and trust me, I don't think he was interested in me either. I'm not saying it like that, but we were just going about our business. And I remember towards the end of the night, he came over. I was behind the bar because my friend's house was just the bomb, and he's the bomb too. And I love and I'll always love Jeff to death. But I was behind his bar, and he came up and he said something to me, and I said something back. But it's like being flirtatious, and he said something about kissing him or something. And I look like, who do you think I am? And he said something about me being scared, and I was like, I'm not scared. I just have. What did I say to him? I said I just have standards, is what I said. And I remember him looking at me like, okay, right? And because he's chocolate, big, buff, 6'1", just beautiful. But at that moment, I didn't see him that way, right? So he walked away, and then he came back and he said, pardon me. He said something about he hadn't been out in a while, and he apologized, and he was just like, I would like to get to know you better. Can we exchange numbers? Now, let me be honest with you. I did the typical thing, right? We exchanged numbers, but in my mind, I'm like, I'm never gonna call him, right? It was like, whatever. It wasn't until we all, because we are responsible drinkers, stayed the night at my friend's house, and the next morning, and now there's a method to why I'm telling this story. The next morning, it was a lot of stuff going on, but I woke up and I had to go to the bathroom. I think I went downstairs, and he was still there. So I guess he stayed the night too. So I was like, "Oh, you're still here." I thought he had left. Actually, to be honest with you, I thought he left with another female, but we ain't gonna talk about that on this video because that's not nobody's business. But he didn't. So, he said, "Yeah." And let me tell you, I don't know how this happened, but this is what happened. Somehow, I think I went back upstairs, and I was getting ready to come back down. And as I got ready to come back down the stairs, because there's a landing, he was getting ready to come up the stairs, and we met in the middle of the landing. When we met in the middle of the landing, I don't know how the conversation started, but he started speaking, and I promise you, what God showed me that day, just standing on those steps, looking into his eyes, I could see his entire soul, his aura. It was like I knew him from something before, and I knew there was something, right? But I saw something, and I said to him just in the middle of his sentence, and I was just like, oh my God. I said, you're so full of love. Oh my God. I said, but there's so much pain. And his eyes kind of got really, really wide and was looking like almost, how do you know that? And he said to me, can you love somebody like that? And I said something like, I think I was made to love you. Just like that. And it was like one of those instant things from that moment on, which is out of my character. And from what I heard from my friend out of his character, it was like we were in love. We were inseparable. We were all over each other, hugging on each other. It was just this thing that I knew him from a past. Like I just knew it. Now I didn't say that then. I didn't understand it then, but it was like God allowed me to see this beautiful human warrior, because that's who I felt he was. It was like he was like a warrior in God's army, like kind of thing. And so I tell you that story to say this. Throughout the courtship, which was rocky up and down and all over the place, he opened up chambers, and I was like, because certain chambers of my heart were closed due to just past my traumatic past relationships, right? And he opened up those chambers again. I remember our first night on the phone, and he told me that he was a writer, and I said, "Oh my God!" He said he writes poetry. I do too. So instantly, we're sharing poetry. Like I'm writing poems to him, he's writing things to me, right? It was like he opened up the chambers of my heart, and at the time, I thought it was all about him, right? It was like, oh my God, because of this love that I was feeling. And he was also a fitness, he's a personal trainer. I was in the fitness heavy. I was teaching fitness. So we both were in the fitness. He was a writer. Now he was a true writer. Like he actually wrote a book and it wasn't published. That drives me crazy because he was just so talented. He wrote a book, and I was in, on my way to becoming a speaker. At that time, I didn't know. He pushed me into it by insulting me, right? Which is so crazy. This is why I said this man opened me up so much. But let's get back to the poetry. He got me back into sharing my writing. And I had always felt that there was something spiritual. I wouldn't say spiritual. I really couldn't describe it, that went on with me. Like I would see things and I would feel different things when it came to people, but I would never speak that kind of stuff, right? You just never would say that. He was the very first man that I opened to about my visions and the visions of him and how I saw him and what I saw and how I saw when he and I first met in a different life, kind of things. And he opened up and left that space open for me to share those things. So I know a lot of people couldn't even figure out why I loved him the way I loved him, because he would do some really strange things. He was running from his own demons, and I will never tell his story because his story was his to tell. And it pains me so much because I really wanted him to write a story, but he told me that it was too painful for him to write. But I really felt like it could save so many young men's lives. I mean, he was just a beautiful man who had survived so much. But when you fight against your own things, sometimes those things tend to overtake you. So we were kind of back and forth. And I remember my friends like, you need to cuss him out. You need to go off on him. But there was something about a soul level love that I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. My ego now, because it was one time when I was like, I'm going to give him the business. And we started, and then he said something that totally like flipped me. Like, that's not what he needs from you. That's not why I sent you to him. That's not what he needs from you, and that's not why I sent you to him. It was almost like, do it the way I told you to do it, right? He needed to feel my love. And I always say that my love is on another level. Now that I'm open to it, because there was years before I was so in my ego self, I couldn't even understand this love, right? So I would love him the way I was told to love him. And that didn't mean, and that's the other thing too about love. And when you're loving someone, that doesn't mean you have to stay with them if they're not ready, right? Because they're not at that level, or they're just not there. And he was very honest with me about where he was. Now, regardless of what I heard and what I saw us really being this power fitness couple. He's the writer, I'm the speaker. I saw this big abundant life for us, but that was my vision. And it really, and now that hindsight is 2020, it wasn't even God's vision, it was mine, right? So just because, you have that kind of love, don't mean you stay together. It got to a point in time with us where it was like, okay, it's he has to go get himself, together and do what he needs to do. And I also felt like I need to grow in some areas too. So, I definitely walked away from it. But within that time of us being together, I opened myself back up. It was like now I could hear again. I could feel my love the way I was, I guess, groomed, or I would say shaped by God to love, which is very different, right? And I understand that the way I love doesn't always mean that I stay with these people forever, because I had it mixed up with this whole loyalty thing. It was, sometimes I'm meant to come into people's life, and just like they're meant to come in mine, to give me something or for me to give them something. And then that's it. I've always made the mistake sometimes, though, of staying longer than I'm supposed to. And that's when the toxic things come in, and all the boundaries get crossed, because I didn't understand my power. I didn't understand why I was made. But he brought me back to that. It was like he brought me back to me. And because I'm going to tell you this. Every time we spoke, even after, I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I always knew that I had to speak to him in love. Now, most people after the breakup would be like mean to people or just like, ugh, whatever. I knew that wasn't what I was supposed to do with him. So even the very last time we spoke, which was December of 2018, because he passed July 20th, 2019, and this is why this whole thing is dedicated to him. Um, I had a dream about him, and I knew that when these things happen, I know when the message is for me and when it's for somebody else. So I wrote him and told him everything, and he wrote me back. And in that message, he's expressed to me, how I will always have this place in his heart. And the only one regret that I have is that I didn't say I love you too. And it was my ego. It was like I I followed my soul love, but my ego still was in there a little bit, right? But even the last time we spoke, it still was in love. You know what I mean? Like I didn't do what the world would tell you to do. That's why this message is important. I was groomed a certain way. I was groomed to love a certain way. I was groomed to do a certain thing. And if I allowed the world to tell me what to do, I wouldn't have been able to do what I was purposely meant to do, right? So what is that saying to you today? You got to walk in your light. If you were put on this earth to do something different, to love different, do that. And then not everybody that walks in, whether in your life, even if it ends horribly, because I've had some things end horribly, you can't look at it for the negative. What did I get out of this? I got me. I'm back writing. He made this comment to me about I don't know how to communicate, and I went out and figured out how to become a part of the National Speakers Association, and became a public speaker. Right? He pushed me into more of my purpose to where I am here talking to you today. I actually started this in 2018, and then I fell into kind of like a deep dark depression as all this stuff was going on. This is before his death, right? All these things were just coming at me, and this was like God kind of trying to get me to say the truth, because I would never speak the truth, right? It wasn't until Kuseem passed away where I spoke truth to God. And let me tell you about what I mean by that. I would never say, I would do everything else, right? I would be down. I would, put on face just enough to get through the day through people, but I would never tell God how angry I was with him. But the moment I found out, I thought I had the best day last year. So last year today, I was getting ready to go to a pool party in my association. Later on that night, I was by myself. The kids weren't home, and I was like, I'm gonna have the best day ever. I don't care. I'm not, with my friends anymore. I'm on this island by myself, whatever. And then I came home from the pool party, and I got on Facebook, and I saw that he had passed away. And let me tell you something. The strike to my heart, the strike to my soul in losing him, it was like my soul knew. I had been along this journey with this man for many lives, and I know some people may not understand that, but I knew I had been with him for many lives, and I felt this devastation that I had never felt before. I experienced death before. Even my oldest son passing, this was different. This was different. I remember going to his funeral and looking at this slideshow and the pictures and stuff. It wasn't even him in the casket. It was just me sitting there. And I remember, like, cause he's young. He was young. He passed away young. So you have people in there, and they're in the funeral, and they're like, laughing and talking or whatever, like it's like a normal day. And all in my head, I kept saying, do you know who's in that casket? Like, do you know who just died? Do you know what just died? This man was so smart, so brilliant, so beautiful. It was like, to me, the world needed everything that he had. How can you not see this? How can you not see who's there? How can you even be talking? I could barely talk. That was the first funeral I had been to where I cried the entire time, and I didn't care what people thought about me because I had to get out of that too. So this is why I love him. He broke all of those chains for me. I didn't care what people thought. I didn't care because, you have people, it's like, well, he was living his life, right? But our love had nothing to do with that. Every relationship is different with people. So my relationship with him was different. I didn't care about others' relationship with him. I know what we had. And it was so, so deep. And this is the other thing too. People would think it's just, they were having, people always go because there's surface sex. Guess what? Every single powerful connection that him and I had on this soul deep level. We talked about visions and past lives and what God allowed me to see, and the poetry was all before any of that ever took place. There was no sex in that. None at all. None. This is 6 months of connecting on a crazy level to the point where I knew my love was overpowering. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in. But I was sent to him for that reason. We had this one day, we were talking about something. We were actually in Jeff's house again. We were going bowling that night. And there was something about love, he said, and I was just like, broken souls crave love. And he looked at me and was like, what made you say that? And because I knew we were both two broken souls craving the love that we found between each other. So it's so weird if you can listen, if you can look at experiences in life and relationships and say, but what did it bring to me? What did it give me? It brought me back to myself. It really made me talk to God in a way that was honest. Because when he passed away, I was done with God. I was finished. I was finished with this universe, or whatever you want to call it, right? I was done. I was like, that's it. I booked a trip. I went away to a place that he talked to me about, us possibly moving to. And let me tell you, last year, this time I made a video after I went on the trip and came back. I put why I went and I came. He brought me back to God. His love opened me up to writing again. Brought me into my next purpose, which is speaking this self-love Sunday every day. Brought me back to me. It made me understand that all the love and energy and everything I was giving to him, I needed to give to myself. I needed to put it back into me. And then I needed to, the biggest thing is, I needed to live full and die empty because he no longer could. He can't do this anymore. So I'm going to do it for him. And I got back on these videos of self-love Sundays, and I've been consistent for the past year. And the other thing he's going to bring me back to, because fitness was our thing. Starting tomorrow on the anniversary of his death, I'm back because I wasn't really doing it before. I was really concentrating on my mental health and trying to get me together. But now, on my baby's anniversary, I'm going to get back into physical fitness consistently for me. So that's what I want you to take away from this today. Love how you were meant to love. Love on the level that you're meant to love on. Love on you at that same level. And look at everything and everyone that comes in your life as some sort of lesson, because they are sent to you to teach you something. You may not experience it on this level. You may not be that deep, and that's okay. But everything happens for a reason. And I know sometimes when you're going through storms, you can't see it. But baby, when you come on the other side, there is nothing but love. I love you for listening. I love you, Kuseem Chandler, for the rest of my life, for bringing me this and to bringing me back to me. And I will always speak his name, because without some of those lessons, I wouldn't be here today. If you would like to reach out to me, please do so at mosassfitness@gmail.com, Mosass Fitness LLC on Facebook and Instagram, and have a wonderful rest of your Sunday.